Hey everyone, JC here. It's been a while since I made videos, but it's been kind of tough time for me. I've had health problems and it really kind of kept me out of the loop. It's kind of hard to work when you're passing out. So yeah, that's what's happening. It seems to have stabilized a little bit, but I'm not still 100%, nowhere near it actually. So we'll have to wait and see how it goes, I guess. Today I'm making a video. It's been a while since I made a video talking about Ukraine. But the thing is, like, I hear many different things about it, and some people really don't understand what's going on, I think, and maybe my video today will help to explain what's going on. So, the first thing is a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but some people are saying that, you know, the Ukraine war, like whatever happens between the Russia and Ukraine, just let them fight, let them kill each other. Although that's not even true anyway, because it's really the Russians that are doing the killing and the Ukrainians defending themselves. Okay, so that's already one point of distinction. The other thing is because of globalization, right? And globalization does not mean that we're all sitting using computers. Okay, that's another false idea, I think. Globalization means that basically all the economies of the world are interlinked, and this is why when Greece or Spain goes underwater, everybody starts to panic. Why? It's not because Spain can fail and just let them fail and rebound somehow. No, it's because other countries have invested a lot of money everywhere. So they have investments in Greece, they have investments in Spain, Portugal, Italy, etc. And so when one economy goes bad, it's not just that country that suffers. It's it's a bunch of countries that suffer, and ultimately, in a very bad case scenario, it can lead to an economic crash worldwide, and that's what globalization means. In a way, there are other aspects to it, but this is the economic aspect. So, yeah, anything that happens to the world markets is not good for people at the end of the day. You can't just like run away from the problem. You have to deal with it. Because we're talking about the economy, it's important to talk about the economic sanctions that were placed on Russia. The way that Russia views it, okay, so I have to explain here something. There are kind of two ways, there are two sides, and they're both looking at the thing from completely different points of view. So from the Western media, right? It's it had to be done. We have to squeeze the Russian economy because hopefully it means that the economy kind of collapses and there's no more money to fund the war effort. That's basically the argument that the West has made. You can argue that it hasn't been very effective yet, um, because half a year later we're still very much in the thick of it. So from the Russian point of view, though, the sanctions, the international sanctions, and remember, the international sanctions, these are the packages, sanction packages that are approved by the United Nations. Many countries are part of the United Nations. Okay, so um, literally, I think almost every country is. So you're Canada, Chile, Argentina, Peru, whatever, Colombia, and the way that Russia looks at it is okay. So if a country signed the sanction packages, we're basically going to take your name for the future. Don't know what's going to happen yet, but we're just going to take your name. We're going to put it on a list that, in the said conflict, you basically went against us. And the way that Putin looks at it is the West is waging economic warfare against Russia. Okay? So that's the way that Putin is looking at it. Now you can say, of course, he's wrong, It's absolutely the other with the other way around, and you're probably right about all of that, but that doesn't matter because that's the way Putin looks at it, and that's the way that Putin conditions Russians to look at the problem. So, moreover, and this one is a bit more tricky to explain, but I'll try my best. In America, we have a bunch of very like toxic individuals. I'm talking about Rush Limbaugh. Okay, he's dead, I think, but anyway, he did his damage. Rush Limbaugh. Um, I don't remember the name. Like Alex Jones is definitely one of them as well. There's the pillow guy to a certain extent, and O'Reilly, Bill O'Reilly, to a certain extent as well. I mean, come on, the guy claims to have a Harvard education, and yet he goes on his show and he claims to not understand how tides work. I mean, that's just ridiculous. But anyway, um, talking about toxicity though, I think Rush Limbaugh and definitely Alex Jones are up there. I'm sure there are others, but I'm just not in the loop, so to say. So I'm not really sure who they are and what they say. But I know we have more than these two, that's for sure. So they are very toxic. They push conspiracy theories. Alex Jones is on trial, by the way, right now. He's getting sued for basically pushing a hoax about the Sandy Hook school massacre, where he said that it didn't happen, that it was basically just a bunch of actors. It was a trick from the Democrats to get more votes and to get some kind of anti-gun agenda going. Um, all of that is a lie, and now he's on trial. And I really hope that they sue him for every single penny. Okay, but just setting that aside. Okay, so these are very toxic individuals. They are what do you say that they're conditioning Americans in a certain way. They're appealing to the conspiracy nuts, to the right wingers, etc., etc. And so, because in America we do have freedom of speech to a larger extent than in Russia, they are allowed to spew their bullshit. But I just want to remind people that freedom of speech, first of all, absolute freedom of speech does not exist. Okay, there's no such thing. You can't claim to be a free speech absolutist and then go ahead and ban books, for example, which these people do. Okay, so they're hypocrites. They're absolute 101. It's 101 hypocrisy. Okay, but so yeah. Anyway, in America we have these individuals. In other countries, you have to understand that it's not quite the same thing. Okay, so for example, if I go to, I don't know, like New Zealand, for example, I'm sure they have like some kind of maybe one like really crazy kind of guy, and everybody knows he's crazy. Nobody gives him airtime, etc., etc. So the influence that he has in New Zealand is not at all the same influence that, for example, Alex Jones has in the United States. Okay, and so in Japan there are probably some cooks as well, um, but in Russia we do have these kind of very insane, crazy individuals that push conspiracy theories in the mainstream. Okay, so like openly, especially on the what we call the first and the second channels, Первый канал and Второй канал, and that's all they do. They pushed some extremely wild conspiracy theories, and I'm sorry, but you can say that there's propaganda on both sides, and that's true to some extent, but the propaganda on the Russian side is way out there. Okay, like really, really, like it's not comparable. Well, let's talk about the propaganda. So in the West, so again, there is a perception, like Russians have a certain perception of the Western media. Right now, that perception is not good at all. For example, in Russian TV, you'll hear things that, the only way to deal with America is to reduce it to atomic ash. I mean, that's what was said, like, to everybody in the country. I think it was the first channel, but I'm not sure. It could be the second. Anyway, that's the type of things that they say. There are other the other conspiracy that they've been pushing recently is it's actually the West that attacked Russia, and it's the West that is threatening to use nuclear weapons against Russia. So you see what they did here? They took the war, right? And Putin at the time gave a bunch of reasons to the war, that NATO's advancing, etc. All of that is bullshit, by the way. I debunked that before the war started, or just after the war started, I guess. Unfortunately, my videos didn't get many views because people are just not really listening to what I say, unfortunately. So yeah. But yeah, he took, like, they took the war and they basically flipped it on the head. So instead of Russia attacking, it now became the Ukraine is attacking. Instead of Russia threatening to use nuclear weapons, it's now the West that is threatening to use nuclear weapons. So you see, and this type of propaganda is what is fed to the Russian people 24/7 on the TV, on the radio, on the internet, and any other medium you can think of. So Russians often cite this type of aggression from the West, that it's the West that is attacking, it's the West that's wanting to use nuclear weapons. Now, is that actually the case? Well, of course, it's not. Nobody wanted to attack Russia. Nobody wants, really, I mean, except for self-defense, nobody in the right mind wants to use nuclear weapons against Russia. Okay. So here we are. We had a bunch of lies from Putin at the beginning of the war. He was saying things like, "Yeah, sure, it's going to be over in a matter of week, in a week or something. We're going to be greeted as liberators," and none of that happened. None of that happened. It was all a lie. 6 months or 7 months even later, we're still there. There are massive losses on both sides. Although I have to say the losses are much bigger on the Russian side. But again, it's a time of war. There's a fog of war. It's difficult to find the accurate information. The most recent information I found is that, and that is up to the end of August. Now we're end of September almost. But until the end of August, I've seen estimates that the Russians have lost 70,000 soldiers, whereas the Ukraine lost 10,000 soldiers. When we talk about military equipment like tanks, military vehicles, mobile headquarters, airplanes, helicopters, etc., the losses are still much, much larger on the Russian side. But this is to be expected because the side that is attacking usually takes a lot more casualties. Like, let's be honest there. It's always easier to defend usually. So that's what's going on. And I just wanted to make this video today because I think it's important that people understand the type of propaganda that is fed to the Russian population right now. If you listen to the BBC, if you listen to CNN and other Western media outlets, they're not talking about that. So at the end of the day, you're not getting the Russian perspective. You're only getting the West perspective, which is mostly right, granted. But it would be helpful, no, to get both sides. Even if one side is absolutely batshit insane, it doesn't matter. You still need to hear the other side, what they say, because at least you know how to counter it, like once you hear it. But if you don't hear it at all, then you're just not informed, you're not gonna be evaluating the risk properly. And that's the thing. That's what people right now are not doing. They're not evaluating the risk properly. And so my final conclusion here is right now there's a lot of talk about nuclear weapons. So just recently in the news, there was the White House thing, and they said that they keep repeating, they keep kind of reminding Russia to not use nuclear weapons because that would just completely change the landscape of the war. My worry here is, so before the war started, right? The U.S. was also warning Russia to not start the war. And yet Putin didn't care, and he still went to war. And right now, I'm seeing kind of a parallel situation. The US is warning Russia not to use nuclear weapons. So, if the previous logic carries on, maybe we regular people, because we're not in on those meetings, we don't know really what's being said behind closed doors. So maybe there is talk about using nuclear weapons, and that's why the US is warning them, hey, calm down, like, don't do that. And my fear is that, Russia is considering it, probably, which would change the war completely, of course. And if that happens, like if nukes start getting involved, it becomes very, very complicated. And I just want to talk briefly about nukes because, I don't think people really understand how it works. So basically, the way that it works is that the order is given to use nuclear weapons. So it undergoes several checks first, and I think it's a computer, but I'm not sure. It could be a human being. Basically, there's a list that comes out of potential targets. Okay, uh, there is a location. It is strategic locations. Sometimes I don't think it's really civilian per se. I think it's mostly some kind of military installations first. Um, right. So in the States, it would be some kind of military academy, maybe, or something like that. I don't know, some military base, like Area 51, for example. Let's use that as an example because why not? So there's a list that comes out, and then I think maybe some general, picks a target, missile is launched. Now, whether the missile actually arrives at the destination or not, I'm not sure how that works because obviously the missiles can be intercepted. It's very difficult to do, but it's not impossible. So yeah, it is possible to intercept the nuke. And but if it reaches the target, let's say, then the other country undergoes the same process. There's a list that comes out of potential targets. There's one target that is picked, missile is launched, and the same. You rinse and repeat until hopefully one side decides to give up. Um, I'm not sure surrender is the right word because obviously they still have a large nuclear arsenal, but they probably will say like, yeah, okay, that's enough. Like, let's not continue that. So, anyway, if that happens, this is not a good scenario for the entire world. Obviously, when nukes, you know, when Chernobyl, for example, blew up, and that's a different scenario, I know that, but if when Chernobyl reactor blew up, you had a bunch of radiation in the air, and it didn't just affect that one spot in Ukraine. Okay, it went all the way to Moscow. It went into most of Europe, and it's radioactive dust that a lot of people were exposed to it. Okay, so it's the same with nuclear bombs. I mean, a lot of people are going to be exposed to it, and that means cancer later, deformed children, and a bunch of other diseases related to radiation. Radiation is not, humans' friend. So anyway, I'm gonna end here because I don't want to ramble on too much, but I hope that I explained the situation well enough. I hope you understand what's going on now a little bit better. Definitely understand that there are two sides, yes, but they're absolutely not in sync. Um, the Western media has never said that the West is attacking Russia, or the West plans to use nuclear weapons against Russia. It was never said, but that's what the Russians are saying, though, and that's very dangerous because now we have a lot of really brainwashed people. I mean, I know some in my direct circles, unfortunately, who completely drank the Kool-Aid, and it's very sad because these are people with, uh, at the time, a good education. They used to be well informed, but they got consumed by this nationalistic fervor, and they're completely blind, I think, to actual evidence. They're just convinced of this one, narrow path. Like whatever our great leader says must be true because he said it, so it must be true. Yeah, so it's very sad. It's very sad. And I don't, so my final thing here is that I don't really see an exit strategy in the foreseeable future because for Russia, from Russia's perspective, Ukraine has to surrender and disarm, etc., etc. I don't think they will stop there, but it will be like definitely a starting point, let's say. But anyway, that's what they want at the moment. They want the Ukraine, and they want Ukraine to demilitarize. What does Ukraine want? Well, Ukraine obviously wants to be free, wants to get back all the territories that were lost, including, by the way, Luhansk, Donetsk, and even Crimea. Because again, after the Soviet Union collapsed, when Ukraine became an independent country, Luhansk, Donetsk, Crimea were all part of Ukraine. Okay, so Ukraine just wants to get back what it had, and those referendums that Russia is planning right now, by the way, in I think in four provinces, they're going to be sham referendums, just like Crimea. So it's funny because some Russians actually strongly believe that the referendum in Crimea was actually legit, that you can actually do something like that. And the exact same thing is going to happen now in four more provinces. Um, just like the elections in Russia itself is all fake, okay? Like Putin always wins by some insane margin. Um, in some provinces, they have the voter turnout. So if it's 100%, it means that every single person who is eligible to vote has voted, which never happens, by the way. Never happens. Even in the US, I think in the best case scenario, you get like maybe 80% of people. Just some people don't vote. Like that's it. But you're never going to get 100, even in a perfect democracy, so to say. Uh, so they have 100%, but in some provinces they were reporting like 200%. So basically, people like maybe registering the dead, fake votes, basically. And of course, just the government like fiddling with numbers. So the elections in Russia are fake. The referendums in Ukraine will be absolutely fake, and yeah, that's kind of the thing. So I don't see the an exit strategy, and that means that the war is gonna be protracted even more. That means even more people are gonna keep dying for, well, um, the Russians are dying for a lie, okay, for many lies actually, and the Ukrainians are dying to basically protect their homeland and against the invaders. Civilians caught in between as usual. So yeah, that's what's going on. I hope I explained the situation well. I don't see an end to the conflict anytime soon, unfortunately, but things can change pretty quickly. I mean, I didn't think that the invasion would happen as quickly, as swiftly as it did back then, but suddenly there was a war, and Russian troops were very, very close to Kiev, for example. So we'll have to see what happens. But anyway, stay tuned for more of my videos. Like I said, my health has not been very good. Still struggling, to be honest. But hopefully I can get more stuff done soon. So stay tuned for more. Make sure to subscribe to my channel. Click the bell button. And so that way, if I make a new video, you'll be notified and you can see it. All right. So peace and take care. Stay safe. And I'll see you around. JC signing off.